Okay, I want to talk about a strange case of a man called José Lomas or Pepe Lomas. He's an 81-year-old man, and a few days ago he was sentenced to 6 years and 3 months. And he also has to pay out 153,000 euros to the family of the victim whom he shot and killed. So let's go through some of the background to it. And I should say that today I was able to read a few articles. I watched a few video clips. A lot of what I'm going to say will be speculation, etc. But as I said at the very start of this recording, it is a strange case. And I don't think it bodes well for, I would say, the notion of private property. Certainly, right? So Lomas lived in a finca. Now, a finca is like a small house in the countryside. It generally has a fence around it or a wall around it, and many of them have a courtyard. They don't tend to come with a lot of land, from what I've seen, but it's a nice way to live, and it's considered very comfortable. And this old man was, I don't know if he ran a bookshop or if he worked in a bookshop. Either way, he worked with books. I can only speculate that he probably wasn't exceedingly wealthy. He'd worked all his life, etc. And here he was living in a finca. Now, this crime, so called crime, happened in August of 2021, so almost 3 years ago. And he got sentenced, as I said, just a few days ago. So I'll get into what I have come across today. Lomas claimed that he had been robbed before. He'd been harassed before. He'd been threatened before. And he said this all went on for about 40 years. He said he had phoned the police, but nothing was ever done. Now, there are people who say that Lomas had mental problems. They name some syndromes he had or whatever. But this didn't seem to matter when he was convicted, when he was sent off to prison for what will probably be the rest of his life. The mental problems, his paranoia, etc., none of this seemed to come to the fore when he was carted off. Anyway, on a night in August of 2021 at 2 o'clock in the morning, Lomas woke up. Now, he kept a loaded shotgun beside his bed, and he heard some sort of noise outside. He got his shotgun and he went out. He went out of the house and he went into the courtyard. He called it the corral, but it's not a corral as we may think. For example, in America, this wide open expanse with fences and horses. This is a relatively small yard, kind of inner courtyard. So he went out there. It was dark, and he said, because there was a reenactment, and I should probably, I'll get into that. He said that in the reenactment with the cops, and it was quite pathetic to see that as well. The cops kind of leading him around. Sometimes Lomas was leading them around, and every so often the cop would kind of hold Lomas like he was a child. And I guess in a way he is a child because, he was, I'm guessing in the footage, he was in his late 70s, early 80s. Looks like a very feeble old man, shuffling about, trying to explain what had happened on that fateful night. But anyway, he went out. He said he saw about 10 to 15 meters away. I think he said 10 meters in the reenactment. He said he saw a bulto. A bulto is like a bundle. And he said he didn't know if it was human or not. He thought it was maybe an animal, and he shot once at it, and it didn't move. And then he shot a second time, and it turned out that the bundle was one Nestor David Ramirez. And Ramirez had in his possession a chainsaw. It was a chainsaw that belonged to Lomas. And Ramirez had, as far as I know, he'd taken it from one of the sheds. And when Lomas had come out, it seems that Ramirez, going by Lomas's account, had crouched down with the chainsaw between his legs. And that's when Lomas claims he shot him. Yeah, it's strange watching the reenactment. It's the second year of the scamdemic. Lomas is wearing the blue muzzle over his mouth and nose, and cops are doing likewise. It's very strange. So I watched a clip of the court case. It was a short clip, and it showed the prosecution lawyer. And he said that the victim was hungry. Nestor David Ramirez was hungry. He was very hungry that night. He wanted food. And he said something like how Ramirez had gone to the finca the day before to take some almonds. And Lomas had told him that if he ever came back, he'd kill him. Now, it's possible I misheard this. It was in Spanish. It's not my native language. But this is what I picked up from that clip. The prosecution lawyer was saying that the victim was hungry the day before, or whatever. He'd gone there to get almonds. Lomas warned him never to come back or he'd kill him. And it was more or less put down on the table that it was premeditated. It was very likely that Lomas had intentionally waited for Ramirez to come back. He'd intentionally turned off the lights. He'd got his gun ready, etc. The defense lawyer, he claimed that Ramirez was stealing stuff. He had stolen the chainsaw, he'd stolen some other stuff, whatever. And he claimed that when Lomas was coming out with the gun, that it was possible Ramirez crouched down. Crouched down as in he was ready to pounce at the old man from 5 to 10 meters, maybe even 15 meters away. This was the idea. And he was saying, what chance, would an old man have if 35-year-old Ramirez, who was, he said, undocumented. It's strange, they never say illegal anymore. They say undocumented. Who was undocumented, had no residency in Spain, was originally from Honduras. Well, what if, the burglar had been able to get to Lomas? What if Lomas hadn't shot him? What would have happened to Lomas? So anyway, yeah. It's in various articles that Ramirez was known to police and he had 38 previous crimes on his rap sheet. And I couldn't find out what his previous crimes were. I couldn't find that. So yeah, that was it. Lomas was in the court. And it's kind of legalese. It is legalese. If you... for example, in Spain, I think in Mediterranean countries, perhaps in Argentina as well, it's not the same as the Anglo countries. This is what I was told by some people. In the case of Spain, anyway, if you say that you shot someone because you are protecting your property, you'll obviously get a much stiffer sentence than had you said that you shot the intruder because you were protecting your life. And in the court, Lomas, he said he was protecting his property. And he said also he'd worked for years, and the idea that someone would come in and steal his stuff he'd worked for, and he said he'd prefer to die than leave his home to a scumbag. So he'd prefer to die than leave his home to a scumbag. He said maleante. I'm translating it into scumbag. Anyway, that seems to be most of it. There's been a groundswell of support for Lomas. A lot of people are signing petitions, and it seems to have hit home with a lot of people. You have this man who worked most likely all his life. He paid his taxes. It's very probable that he pays property taxes. He gets woken up at 2 a.m. He discovers he's being robbed, shoots at he doesn't know what, so he claims. Perhaps he knew. We'll never know. Anyway, he shoots twice. He then phones the Guardia Civil, which is the rural police. They recommend that he phone the national police. Like a good citizen, he does so. He phones the national police. And what happens? Well, a few days ago, the system, what does the system do to a model citizen? Well, they make an example of him, don't they? Why do they make an example of him? 6 years and 100 and what did I say? 100 and was it 35? Sorry, 153,000 euros that has to go to the parents of the career criminal, the illegal career criminal. Has to go to his parents and also has to go to his two brothers. They all get a piece of the pie. They all get a piece of this 81-year-old man's lifetime of work and of being a model citizen and of paying taxes, etc. They get a slice of the pie. So this old man will very likely be homeless if he ever gets out of prison. He'll be bankrupt if he ever gets out of prison. All that hard work, all that graft will mean nothing because it will go to the family of Ramirez, the burglar. And a lot of people are not happy about this, and they're trying to get old Lomas out of prison. But yeah, it's a very strange case, a sign of the times. The system has made an example out of this elderly man who protected his property. And you have to wonder, is it the idea that, the commies who are currently calling the shot, is it something to do with them despising the idea of private property? Despising the idea of private property for the 99% of us anyway? I think it's a fair question. I would say that this conviction will embolden robbers, burglars, thieves, call them what you will. It'll embolden them to up the ante, to rob more places, to attack more homeowners, because they know that the system has their back for now, anyway.